with Aratame by EmmaT. And she threw me and I threw her. The 6-year-old you repeated. And it was a dark abyss, the you and now repeat. As you reminisced, you sensed the presence. You have a hard time recognizing. You've always had a hard time. The density of these words adds. Adds to what? Lost opportunities, lost possibilities, feelings we can never get back. That's part of what it means to be alive. But inside our heads, at least that's where I imagine it. There's a little room where we store those memories. A room like the stacks in this library. And to understand the workings of our own heart, we have to keep on making new reference cards. We have to dust things off every once in a while, let in fresh air, change the water in the flower vases. In other words, you'll live forever in your own private library. Haruki Murakami, Kafka on the Shore. A few years after, the 6-year-old you become 11. Then you are told to leave Japan for the US. Then you really leave, flying over miles and miles of the sea. Then you, an 11-year-old, on a plane, think hard about how you were going to think from then on. The young me was afraid of nothing but, a song repeated. You walk into a classroom and you feel new. New was good to you sometimes, and new also made you alien. You were asked to introduce yourself, and you only knew how to say your name, and hello. You sensed it again. The pause that you've created in your class circle. Now you were really thrown. You kept on pondering, why can't they all write their words onto paper? Or a book, or just on you with a marker. At some point you say this aloud, a person responds with a bright, you'll adjust and will be able to communicate faster soon. You feel thrown again. You felt misunderstood, though you understood her, him, that human, and the rest of the people who said the same to you. It was not about the process of learning to you, it was a matter of life and death. It was that you could not hold on to words released easily in a breath to others, that you lost pieces of it that made it complete. You wanted time, and you wanted to go back to times, and you wanted to take others' time. Now back to times. A while back, your uncle told you stories about Japanese publication controls during the tempo reform era. There is a word called aratame. This word resonates with change. Back when Western influences entered Japan with ships, people faced a wall of language. Then numbers of scholars worked on this single book. Manual guidebook? No, a rule book. But you have to recognize, this was not just a rule book for publication controls. It was a record of people's thoughts and changes from back then. The you and now nod, that the publication control did not only involve publication and marketing of documents alone, that it was also political, religious, educational, technological, emotional, and everything else that this era was. You sense the presence. Years later, after practice and practice and practice and time, you finally comprehend some words with solid shapes. But with time, you also grew dull of your reminiscence you sensed back then. Then, as when. The dullness made you vulnerable, a frog in a well. It was only natural that you became less alien to the new, while you became alien to the old. It was give and take, but you felt more loss in identity. You felt more that was taken. This was perhaps human nature, as Haruki Murakami had mentioned in Kafka on the Shore. You stood there. You chose to remain there for another year. One day, you alone travel back to Japan. You become curious about the story your uncle shared back then. You stroll through the streets in search of that library you reminisced about. You traced and stroked, expecting some of the dust to fall within. But the streets had new neighborhoods, the curves had traffic lights, and new plants were planted. This did not sadden you. This made you elated, that you were to be the frog and the frog to be in the well. You reached the library. The inside was the same as you were depicted, and yet it was you felt an unfamiliarity. You felt the difference. You felt different. The somewhat musty yet pleasant smell of the books, the sound of quiet that remained silent for years, the perfectly smoothened wooden floor that remained its shine, all brought you nostalgia except. Cultures will root within you. Those who truly care will remain with you. Things that have no urge will not budge. But there you were, hustling from places to places, an endless branch. A few weeks after, you planned to leave. then you really leave flying miles and miles of the sea. Then you, an alien to you, think hard about how you will aim to live in that private library.